Good morning, friends. Welcome to Coffee Talk. Glad you can hang out with us this morning. We have a nice, cool, crisp fall morning, and we thought we'd come to a nice place to hang out all throughout the year. I think we've been here literally every single season because it's just a nice place. This is the Nut Farm, and we are surrounded by a lot of wild animals, which is beautiful and wonderful. There might even be some deer in over our shoulder, but that's not why we're here. We're here to just hang out with you all and to get you kind of informed and bring us all up to speed so that we can continue on together. So one of the first things that we do is we look back.
Right.
And we look at this sermon this last week and just kind of process that a little bit. And hopefully you've had a chance to see it, to hear it. You can check it on our podcast if you're into audio, or you can check it out on YouTube, or hopefully you were there Sunday morning. And so we have some thoughts and reflections. Jeff challenged us with the idea of who is the greatest. The fact that Jesus was kind of walking a little bit towards his death, and the disciples are kind of sitting in behind him talking about who's the greatest.
Yeah.
And he said, "So what's up, guys? Nothing?"
Yeah. You know what? The first thing that comes to mind in that is we have these discussions all the time, but usually it's more like, who, like greatest NBA player, right?
Yes.
Like even that, my kids will be like, "Dad, who's the greatest hockey player?" And it's so generational.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was this, and like, oh, what was this? And it doesn't matter. There's no such thing as
the old, Jordan versus LeBron, who would win?
Right.
Well, it doesn't matter because they're two different generations.
Absolutely. But it's an entirely different thing when it's like you're not. It's so internal, right? It's me or that person as we are live in this thing. It'd be entirely different if. Anyways, so it was a weird, I think, kind of conversation.
Yeah.
But maybe not.
Yeah.
I think it's human, right?
Yeah.
I think these kind of things get included in the Gospels, and it humanizes the disciples. But that just because it's human nature doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Jeff was trying to challenge us with, right?
So I don't know how many times, just in the last few days, or even in the last week, for some reason the word just keeps coming back. And Jeff used it a couple of times, and then I was reading something else, and it came back again. The word jockeying.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And boy, does that put a picture in your mind if you've looked at horse racing or
Right.
going to the track, not necessarily betting on the track, but just watching jockeys, watching that sense of like I have to get ahead of everybody else, and push my way ahead, and I don't care what happens, I'm pushing my way through. And we've been watching a lot of hockey these days too, because the Flames are doing awesome, and the Canucks.
The Canucks are setting records.
The Canucks are setting, but you know what? I've been enjoying watching the Canucks as well too. But what I will say too,
watching them burn, like what?
No, it's still enjoyable.
Okay. Anyways, all right, sorry. I'll try not to distract us. I'll let the squirrels do that.
But the thing about even in hockey is the way you kind of get yourself going and put yourself forward is you get your elbows out, right? You to kind of sit back and let everything happen around you. It's harder to make a good play, and it's harder to get where you're going and do what you're supposed to do when you're just kind of sitting back and very passive. But the idea is elbows out. Same with jockeying, pushing forward, pushing your horse kind of in and around other people and kind of pushing them back a little bit. And that's kind of drawn this huge picture. This is what Jesus is saying we are not to be about.
Yeah.
We are not to jockey for position. And if we are, there's a serious issue there. Because then, right at the very end, Jesus takes this example and kind of throws it in the middle of the table and says, look at this child. Think about this for a second, right? This hopefully should turn the whole idea on its head, and hopefully should get your guys' attention about what this life is supposed to be about and what I'm supposed to be about, because I've told you now the second time I'm going to my death.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. And I think if we can't if we can't accept Jesus' definitions of greatness or his understanding of greatness, we're not going to be able to accept a suffering Messiah.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he keeps, bringing it up, because he doesn't want them to miss the miracle. He doesn't want them to miss the resurrection. And so he's preparing them for that because he knows them better than they know themselves.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's part of what he's trying to do there. So here's this child. Here's one of the least. Guys, this is your goal. Great goal, Jesus. Thanks.
Yeah.
I think this isn't a direct quote, but pretty much what Jeff said was that Jesus is saying the key to greatness is not trying to be great or making a name for yourself. The key to greatness is that anyone who wants to be first must be last. And his example of that was, here's the, last in society. But I wondered, what does that look like for us today? And I think that's what I've been kind of in the last few days trying to think through is, what are our examples of last? Because it's not just holding the door open and letting others go through first. It really isn't. I mean, maybe that's part of it in serving
maybe that's where
others.
It starts. Maybe that's the thin edge.
Sure, that could be. But I think it's got to be more than that. And it's more than just being nice. But it's about, giving up privilege, giving up power, giving up a sense that things have to be our way.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it, because if I look at the disciples, none of them would have chosen for their Messiah to die.
Right.
That wasn't their way. None of them thought that would be the way this plays out. And yet, that was God's way.
Yeah.
So what about for us then? What does that look like for us today? And I think that's probably a question we should continue to wrestle with.
Absolutely. I think it even takes it one step further, because it starts with okay, think of others more highly than yourself.
Right.
Okay, so that's a start. But I think Paul even then takes it a little bit further and says, okay, do you really believe this? Right. Then okay, when it comes to taking a brother to court or something like that, where it's getting down to very practical, it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's about reconciling, kind of biting your tongue a little bit when you feel like you're supposed to be, when you're right and everybody should be looking at you and everybody should be, getting onto your side rather than the other person's. And I think that's also how it becomes a little bit more practical for me as well too, because then it says, okay, it's not just about putting others first. It's also saying, how can I make my name a little bit lesser? And I think there's a two-partness to that of putting others higher and me lesser in some ways.
Yeah.
That's how it kind of becomes a little bit more practical for me as well too.
Yeah. And I mean, we don't need to manufacture opportunities to not make ourselves lesser, but just step back, right? Being wronged, being okay with that is part of it. I think, Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers. And I love how Paul, he interprets that, comes along and says so you're going to be wronged and you're going to be okay with that.
Yeah.
That's how you make peace.
Yeah.
These days, that's a tough one to swallow.
It is.
For many people.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I guess we'll keep wrestling with that, because I don't think I have it all solved today.
What now does this mean as we move to next week?
Right. So for those of you who will be joining us on Sunday, Jeff is away. I'll be preaching, and we have one of those instances where when you read through your modern translation of the Bible, some editor comes along and goes, let's put a break here. And so you go, okay, there's a break there.
And a slight commentary, because I'm going to sum up the next three paragraphs in one phrase.
Not only is there in Mark's writing no break there, it's the same day. The event of verse 38 or whatever where I come in is seconds after, not even. So anyways, so there is some follow-up, some continuation of that, and that's partly why it's great to feel like, oh, we don't have to be done with this. We're still on that lesson of what does it mean then? What does this mean? What does this mean?
Yeah.
So part of that though is I would love it, and we're going to talk about this on Sunday. And this is preparation homework. Consider this prerequisites. It'd be great for you to know what your name means. And I don't really want to say more about it than that. But before Sunday, before you listen to the sermon, whether it's Sunday at 10 when you join us, or if you're going to connect with it later, before the service starts, it'd be really great for you to have a thought about I know what my name means.
So what do you do if like your name means like better than others? Doesn't that take the whole thing? And
I think you need to, we'll help you figure out how to legally change your name. Right.
Well, see, I've also noticed too that like, okay, well, it depends where. Okay, if you're
right,
if you're seeing it from like a, okay, this is an Irish name, but if you take that same name and translate it into this, other background, it could be totally different.
Absolutely. That's very possible.
So we'll help you expand your understanding of what your name means if that's.
And then you can go on Ancestry and find out which one you're. No, it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Anyways,
that's whole can of worms there.
Yeah, possibly. So that's something just to kind of think about before we come to Sunday.
Yeah. One thing I kind of wanted to just remind us about from this last week is that there was a slight technical issue, and so I'm just going to fix it. And instead of making a big thing about it, I'm just going to fix it because we want to be able to highlight some of the things that happened in the service where the microphone didn't come through, and that's nobody's fault. It just happened. So you'll also see, if you're watching this last Sunday, there was a moment without a microphone. I'm just going to take that section and we're going to re-release it with the microphone because we still recorded it in the background.
Great.
And so you'll be able to see Ron's financial update because he actually explains here's what the whole roof fundraising campaign is and how it kind of works and what you need to do. And then he went into how to practically e-transfer if you're into that, and if you can do that, and so that's important information that you should have sound for.
That's helpful information for giving in general to roof and other things. It's not just a roof project thing, but it's great. Thank you for making that available.
And the same thing happened then with Caleb. Yeah. So Caleb's testimony of some of the stuff he did this summer, we're going to re-release that as well too. So that'll be all on our Lakeview YouTube page. You can go check that out. The link will be also in the description of this video as well, and so you can go see that and just kind of get back up to date with those things. There's some really cool experiences there. So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We also wanted to make sure you knew about updates with our library.
We have a library?
We have a library. That's maybe update number 1. We have a church library. I say that because I know some of you are new to Lakeview and you just didn't know. So there's a room. It's down the hall from our, I don't know which way you go. I always get my directions mixed up there.
West. But
away from the offices towards the classrooms, past the fellowship room. And there's a great library there with books. And
actually,
movies even.
Really good selection.
Yeah.
Like lots of movies, lots of documentaries and some music and the whole Narnia on audio CD is there. That was a great thing when we went on a trip one time. It was pretty cool.
Is it good for a long car ride?
Except when Alana was driving with
so hard
kids.
If that hit you. Sorry.
Was driving with kids and they had it quite loud, and it got to that moment where the stone table cracked, and
spoilers.
And she thought that something in the van broke.
Oh no!
Because it was that loud and that like thunderous, and so it was interesting. It was good. It was true to life, I guess.
Great. So. Very cool. So
what about the library?
What about the library? Well, when COVID started, we kind of, I don't know if we really officially closed it, but we just kind of like, it wasn't really used, right? We didn't quite actively discourage the use, but we didn't make it available to people freely. And now we're trying to make sure that all of you know it's there, and it's available. And we have a new volunteer coordinator who's overseeing the checking in and out of materials, and making sure that it's orderly and all of that. And so now, it's Ann, right?
Ann Schuster.
I wanted to say,
Ann
I
Schuster.
wanted to make sure I'm not thanking the wrong person. I'm like, no, I think it's Ann.
Yeah.
So Ann Schuster, thank you for stepping forward and taking that on. Really appreciate it. And thank you to
And
Cheryl.
thank you to Cheryl.
Yeah, Cheryl Johnston has overseen that for many years,
Yeah.
and so we're excited that that resource continues to be available for all of you to use and take part in. And so there's books there. If you're a fiction reader, there's books. If you're a nonfiction reader, there's books. If you just like a good old picture book, there's books there. Like you said, stories on CD. There's movies. There's kids programs. There's all kinds of stuff, and it's great to see it used and enjoyed.
Yeah. And so you'll see in your weekly email bulletin when the hours are, but generally it's kind of just before church that it's open.
Yep.
And so you can check that out in our announcement section on the bulletin. Yeah.
That's great.
Thanks for hanging out. I don't know if you've been watching the deer this whole time, but
I don't know if you've noticed, I've been watching this whole time.
I've been kind of hoping that they're not going to get too close to us, but they're off doing their thing. But thanks for hanging out with us. Hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you Sunday.